So it's my distinct pleasure to address you on behalf of NSF this morning. It is in fact my first time in South Dakota, and while my travel schedule is really busy, I'm pretty well traveled, and I'm very happy to be able to check at least one of the Dakotas off the list. I must say that I was very impressed with the show of support from senior leadership in all of the universities. And also, I would like to commend the South Dakota universities for picking such a great partner for this activity. So I was unaware of Northeastern University before joining National Science Foundation. I was certainly familiar with some of the other Boston universities, but I was really impressed with Northeastern and their connections with industry, which go deep and long. So I think you have a great partner there. And I look forward to seeing some of the outcomes from that partnership as you continue to advance and launch your prospective center. So just a little bit about myself before I really get into the presentation. I am an academic. I'm on loan to the National Science Foundation from the University of Maryland, College Park, where I'm an associate professor in fire protection engineering and director of the Fire Testing and Evaluation Center. I've spent a little over 2 years at NSF. I was a program director for IUCRC. I am no longer program director for IUCRC, but I'm filling in for a colleague. So I share the portfolio previously with my colleague Prakash Balan and Dimitri Perkins of the 75 centers and approximately 300 sites, university sites that we have in the program. In the beginning of the summer, I transitioned to become program director for the I-Corp program, which is a program that teaches academics how to become entrepreneurs. And you heard a little bit about I-Corp as well as IUCRC from some of the commentary previously. And whether it's I-Corp or whether it's IUCRC, it's all about getting some of these ideas out of the laboratory and into market and industry university engagement. And so I'll talk about that as we go on. So here's an outline for the talk. I would like to give you an overview of the National Science Foundation and then kind of explain NSF's role in innovation through the IUCRC program. Certainly I'll dive into a little bit more detail, describe the IUCRC program, and specifically describe how the IUCRC program envisions its role in innovation through IUCRC centers, and then dive into some of the detail about the centers. So first off, let's just share a little bit about NSF. NSF envisions a nation that creates and exploits new concepts in science and engineering in providing global leadership in research and education. We have about $7.5, probably closer to $8 billion now behind that goal. Historically, NSF has produced over 220 Nobel laureates, and at any given time, NSF is supporting over 350,000 researchers, postdocs, trainees, teachers, and students. So NSF has an outsized impact on fundamental research in the nation. And we're very active in the startup space, supporting 400 startups and small businesses every year. Also, I provided this graph to kind of give you an idea about the amount, really the extent that NSF funds the fundamental research activities in the nation. So you can see on this bar chart, we're looking at the fraction of fundamental research supported by NSF in research domain. And you can see that over 80% of the fundamental computer science research is funded by NSF. And if you go down to engineering, For example, you'll see 40% of all fundamental research is being funded by NSF. Some more details about the organization. You don't have to really understand the org chart. You can see our director, Dr. France Cordova, at the top, and then highlighted in gold is the budget for the Directorate of Engineering, which is about $1 billion, okay? So we're putting about $1 billion a year into engineering, and out of that billion, $250,000, or excuse me, $250 million is directed towards the Division of Industrial Innovation and Partnerships. So the Division of Industrial Innovation and Partnerships is actually houses the IUCRC program and the I-Corp program and others, which I'll talk about later. And it's all about lab to market activities. And so it's very important for NSF to get those fundamental research investments out of the laboratory and driven towards societal and economic impact. Okay, so let's now talk about how NSF envisions its role in innovation through the IUCRC program. So NSF really does have a rich ecosystem of industry, society, private investors, academia, and startup paying attention to time. But I want to give you kind of unique insight into NSF, things that I didn't really understand until I joined the organization. So NSF cares about society. And so, you know, the academics that are out there, you know, we're tasked with writing our broader impacts, right? And so we're like, oh gosh, you know, how is this, you know, really cool stuff in the lab actually going to be impactful? Well, you know, NSF is not just doing that to give us a hard time. There really is a culture about not only being good stewards over the tax dollars, but making sure that those tax dollars are really driven towards societal impact. And so society is a key stakeholder here. And I've had the privilege of working with my colleagues who are civil servants and permanent NSF employees that really kind of pass that value on to me. And I can assure you that that broader impact challenge is not just lip service. We really are looking for ways that the cool things that we do in the laboratory can impact society. So that being said, you can see NSF's really acting as a catalyst between industry and university, all right? Again, as an academic, you know, we're really looking for that support, right? We want funding, and NSF does provide funding, but we catalyze activity. And I hope you could just take a moment and pause and see how we're doing that right now, right? I mean, we set frameworks and create opportunities to bring people together in order to leverage our talents and NSF's investment in order to really focus on this key stakeholder there. Okay, that's kind of a conceptual view. Let's speak plainly here, okay? So speaking plainly, what is IUCRC about? The IUCRC program provides seed money to multiple universities to work together and conduct pre-competitive IP R&D that is of interest to companies who pay a fee to participate. We're a consortium, right? That's what IUCRC does. Industry pays funds, the industry provides funding. They pay that to the universities to conduct research. The research that we do fund is use-inspired research, but it is still fundamental research. It's still about discovery. We kind of call that flavor of research pre-competitive. And of course, this whole idea about the research being of interest to companies, that's the use-inspired piece. Seed money is important as well, right? So NSF's portion, and we'll talk a little bit about this later, is really for operations. Say just a bit about that. NSF's portion is for operations. The industry money goes towards the research. NSF's money is to make sure that the administration of the center is being operated at a high level that is consistent with the expectations of industry, okay? So that's the seed that NSF plants to be able to host meetings like this. In the future, there'll be semi-annual meetings if the center is successfully launched, and you'll have the appropriate staff in order to manage the research enterprise at a level that is consistent with an industry engaged center. Okay. Objective. So the objective of the IUCRC program is to stimulate non-federal investment in R&D to improve the application of R&D results. These centers were started in 1972. You can see the president's message here. We always say the president's message because it sounds better than saying that this was a Nixon's initiative, okay? So, but it was actually Nixon's initiative. So the first center proposals were received in 1972, and the first experimental awards were made in 1973, and the program has been in force and evolved ever since. This is an elaborate chart. I'll just take a few moments to go over it. Of course, this is the proverbial Valley of Death pictured here, and we've got resources invested on the y-axis. On the x-axis, we have technology translation, and you can see the various stages of that translation from research to commercialization. And you can see that in gray that when the research is very early stage, government is investing in it, and as it matures, the government investment goes down, and the idea is that private funds will pick up as the technology is de-risked, all right? Highlighted in these kind of vertical areas are NSF Industrial Innovation and Partnership programs, all right? So these are IIP programs that offer mechanisms of support for nascent technology as it translates towards commercialization. And what I like so much about IIP is that it's not one size fits all. There are various needs for technology as it translates in various mechanisms in order to support that nascent technology as it matures. And IIP has several different mechanisms, and you can kind of choose the one that's right for you. And so I've highlighted them here. There's the GOLI program. I'm going to talk about these later, I think, just to make sure I have enough time. There's the IUCRC program. There's the PFI program. There's the I-Corp program, the intern program, and the SBIR program, all right? I'll discuss these programs at the very end. Typically it generates a lot of interest, and we'll have some time to talk about them over break, all right? Okay, let's focus on the IUCRC program. The IUCRC program portfolio is demonstrated here. We have about 11 different thrust areas that kind of range from advanced electronics through energy and environment, through civil infrastructure systems. We have 87 centers. I know I mentioned 75 earlier because 12 of those centers right now are in the planning stage. Okay, so 87 listed, 243 sites that correspond to about 126 unique institutions. And so you can see that 12 of these centers are in the planning stage. The centers, in addition to being parsed by thrust area, they're also parsed by maturity. And so these IUCRC centers typically have a lifespan of at least 15 years before they actually graduate. Okay, and NSF organizes these centers into 3 5-year phases, and they're renewed at the end of each phase. and of course the NSF's investment changes as the center matures, and I'll talk also a little bit about that. So you can see the 3 phases also represented here, where we've got 33 centers in phase 1, 37 centers in phase 2, and only 5 centers in phase 3. It becomes harder and harder to qualify to meet the requirements as the center advances. That's one of the reasons for the numbers, membership requirements increase. We'll talk about that later. And another reason to bring to your attention about the smaller number, 3, which I think is interesting. Some technologies, especially computer science area, where you can see a lot of these centers here. Please realize that it's not that NSF really has some kind of outsized investment in IT, communications, and computing. This is just a vestige of the way NSF kind of organizes its funding scheme. So all of these centers here are not funded by engineering, they're funded by SISE, which is the Computer Information Science Directorate. And they have not provided detailed thrust areas like we have. So they're all of the computer related stuff is just grouped into one. So that's what that's about. Speaking of computer and IT related research, oftentimes a center may have run its lifespan in computer. Technology changes. And so many, what happened? Many of the size centers don't go to phase 3 because their contribution has already been made to that area, and it's not always new technology. And so they just have to join online and they can do it. So I may advance. Okay. Okay. Would you like? No, you're doing that. Okay, thank you. So this is a geographic distribution for the centers. We've got, you know, certainly like to see some more activity in the Dakotas. 6 international sites and 804 unique members. So I think that's new information on this slide. So we talked about the number of unique institutions, universities, but here we have over 800 unique industry members that are investing in the IUCRC program. This program is highly leveraged. So the leveraging is 33-1. So $1 of industry investment translates to $33 in value. So the industry is getting a good deal here, and I'll take questions at the very end. Thank you. And I'd also like to mention that we do a lot of workforce development in the IUCRC program. So please look at this stat. Between 2006 and 2017, over 1,700 graduate students were trained and hired by industry members. And that number is about, corresponds to about 35% of the students that participate in IUCRC go on to work for member companies. That's really, and I tell industry members this time and time again, we're gonna have a conversation about IP. It's important, and the IUCRC program has clear terms for IP. Nevertheless, the best, absolute best mechanism to translate your technology from this IUCRC is to hire students. And that's one thing that cannot be overstated. Technology translation largely happens by hiring the students trained in these centers. Okay, here's a breakdown kind of the types of members we have. 52% are large businesses, 27% small businesses, 12% federal government agencies, 9% state government and nonprofits. Okay, so we're going to go into yet another level of detail and start discussing some of the characteristics of the centers. So kind of got an overview of our portfolio and what NSF is doing in terms of industry university engagement. Now let's look at how these centers actually work. Okay, well, first thing I'd like to describe is just the overall environment of an IUCRC. So, and this point is first for very good reason. One thing that I'd like to mention is that NSF has a very rigorous merit review process. Okay, we are known, NSF is hard funding. It's very difficult to get NSF funding. And so I want to assure industry members that if this center is successful, that you have a high quality center that has undergone quite a bit of due diligence and scrutiny, and you will have one of the leading centers in the country because NSF takes its merit review very seriously. We convene a panel of experts, not only in the thrust area, but also in industry university engagement to review these proposals. In addition to our rigorous merit review process, we have center oversight. So this will be different than a conventional academic award where you're at the mercy of the faculty member a little bit in conducting the research. So we have a schedule of engagement that is semi-annual, and we also have assessment coordinators that participate in every meeting, and they are in many ways our mechanism in order to do oversight and in order to ensure transparency of the activities that are going on in the center. And so our assessment coordinators will write a report back to NSF on the meetings to make sure that they are occurring in accordance with NSF policy and to make sure that the center is progressing as expected. So, and then of course NSF provides the money, but it's really, you know, those mechanisms that are really important. And I just also want to point out that like this activity is pretty rare to get industry and university in a room. And so just the framework on how to do this is a major value from NSF, in addition, of course, to the seed funding that we provide. So we provide this framework. We provide the institutional knowledge. And so NSF has been doing this for a long time. We provide also a framework for long-term relationships, okay? These industry university relationships persist, right? This is phase 1 through 3 is 15 years, and many centers continue beyond that. And there's also supplemental funding. And we'll talk about supplemental funding at the very end and all those other opportunities in the ecosystem. Okay, so the focus is on partnership, enabling industry relevant pre-competitive research. We bring together industry members and academic sites, of course, and we do focus on cutting edge fundamental research. So that's important. So this is an NSF center, and so the research has to be deep tech and cutting edge, and of course this center activity qualifies. And I also want to point out that the members do drive the direction of the center research through active involvement and mentoring, okay? And we have a mechanism for how to do that in this program. And I'll talk about that mechanism on how the industry actually drives the research direction. So this is a little schematic of the center organization. You can see at the top, we have the Industry Advisory Board. That is a board consisting of the fee-paying members. At the bottom, we have our university sites, in this case, which will be 4. In order to make all of this work, it requires trust to be built not only between the members, but also in the model. Okay, so NSF has very clear guidelines on how these centers should operate. We're flexible, but at the same time, we have a framework that's tried and true. And if you trust that framework, your center can scale. And we love centers to scale with dozens and dozens of members. So the IAB pools member funds. The center sites, they provide access to their infrastructure, and they invest their indirect costs. And between the pooled members and the investment of indirect costs and infrastructure from the universities, we support, the IUCRC supports a portfolio of research projects. This portfolio of research projects is cooperatively defined and selected by the industry members. It is governed by the IUCRC agreement, and one of the hallmark features of this agreement is that industry members are provided NSFs, non-exclusive royalty-free rights to any IP that is generated. This portfolio addresses the pre-competitive needs of shared by the IAB and leverages and builds on university strengths. Okay, paying attention to time. Let me say something about IP. I want to say something about IP very quickly here. So, yes, we provide NSFs. We provide this non-exclusive royalty-free rights to any IP that's generated. We have clear terms for the IP, and there's always a focus on IP, all right? There is value to that IP. IUCRCs focus on pre-competitive fundamental research and discoveries. Because we do that, from time to time, IP will be generated. It'll happen, but that's not the main focus of the center. Oftentimes, IP is a focus of the center because it's a quick way to somehow attribute value to center engagement. But I can assure you that the value that you will receive from this center will be from the research and your activities in actually taking these discoveries and knowledge back to your respective organizations and creating mechanisms to actually translate that knowledge into value in your company, okay? So even if magically you could get every piece of IP that was generated, you would still have the same problem. How do I create value from that IP into this organization? So I just want you to appreciate, and kind of, challenge yourself when you're thinking about IP. Yes, IP, all of our centers produce IP, but the real goodness in these centers comes from challenging your respective organizations to take the learnings, the knowledge, and the discovery and make use of it in your organization. The same would be true for IP. Okay, so this is what our funding profile looks like for typical centers. We start off at the planning phase, $15K per site. And if the center is successfully launched, NSF will invest $150K, and there will be a requirement per site again. There will be a requirement of 3 members and a minimum of $150K cash support for phase 1. If the center is renewed to phase 2, the requirement will be 4 members per site with a minimum cash investment of $200K, and then phase 3 requires 5 members per site with a minimum cash investment of $250K. So, and I should point out that a major benefit of these centers is that 90% of the investment of the member fees by industry goes directly to the research. So the IDC rate is only 10%. We want to make sure that industry members are getting a great value for their investment in these IUCRCs. And I don't think you'll ever find an IDC rate like that. So it's a really good value for members, in addition to the leveraging and pooling of resources. Okay, very briefly, see how we're doing on time. The membership agreement. So parties to the agreement are the universities, the members, and the center itself. The IAB consists of 1 rep per center, and of course there's an annual membership fee structure. According to the Bayh-Dole Act, this is federally funded research that's going to the universities. The Bayh-Dole Act stipulates that the universities must own that IP. So the universities do own the IP. However, industry members do have rights to that IP from the university through a royalty-free, non-exclusive license. Okay. However, if there is an option for exclusivity. If only one company wishes to exercise that right, a royalty-free option, I guess it's down here. If only one company seeks license, it may obtain an exclusive fee-bearing license, excuse me. And companies wishing to exercise rights to the royalty-free license pay a patent to, they pay for the patent application, okay? So if companies want to license, they pay for the application. And if one company seeks if one company is interested in IP, they may seek an exclusive arrangement, all right, which will be fee-bearing. Okay, so this is what the process looks like in terms of creation of the center. You can see that there was already a planning proposal. It went through our gold standard merit review process. You're here in member recruitment and here in the planning meeting, and there'll be the need to submit a full proposal. It will go through merit review and potentially another award. We can talk about some of these details for timing later. I want to row through some of the supplemental funding opportunities. It's 9:30. This should take just two more minutes. Okay, so the way that so right now you all are in the NSF ecosystem. So you're already a part of this ecosystem, and there are advantages to being a part of this ecosystem. There's of course base funding, but there are other programs, and I want to tell you about some of these other programs. There are funding supplements, there are funding programs, and then there's also a network that you have access to. Okay, in red are the IIP programs, but you heard mentioned that there's the REU program and the RET program and the Veterans Research Supplement program, all supplemental opportunities with NSF funding, which are excellent. These can greatly enhance not only your research enterprise from the standpoint of work products, but also create a rich environment where you've got undergraduate students and students of different backgrounds collaborating in a team environment. It's really amazing. In red, there's the intern program. This is a new program that my colleague Prakash Balan started, which is essentially a co-op program for graduate students. So it provides 6 months and $50,000 worth of support to allow a graduate student to have a real world work experience in industry. And so this program has been extremely popular since its inception, and it can provide a really unique experience for graduate students. As you know, most graduate students do not go on to become university faculty members. And so we want to make sure that these students who are in graduate school are not only being trained to be outstanding academic researchers, but they also are getting relevant skills that will provide them or will prepare them for success in their most likely career path, which will be out in industry. Okay. So there's also the GOLI program, which is the Grant Opportunities for Academic Liaison with Industry. I'd really like the IUCRC to think about this from this perspective. So IUCRCs are about use-inspired research, and the pace is generally fast. So, you know, from year to year, you're really needing to make progress. But you may identify knowledge gaps in your project, and industry may be very interested in continuing to address their issue, but not able to really take the time or invest the resources to close those knowledge gaps. Well, the GOLI program provides an opportunity to address some of those very nice knowledge gaps that are more fundamental than IUCRC work. And you've got a really nice narrative that you can tell because you worked with industry in order to identify this knowledge gap through an IUCRC. And you can go to NSF and ask for additional funding and additional time that can also support the IUCRC activities. So I wanted to mention GOLI. There's the PFI program. PFI program is a prototyping program. So PFI, it provides $250K for 18 months or $750K for 3 years to take a technology from proof of concept to minimum viable product, okay? So this is a great, it's very unique money to be able to have for a prototype, right? And NSF typically doesn't make these kinds of investments. So I've actually done a GOLI before as an academic. I've done a PFI as an academic, and I was an I-Corp, I was I-Corp team number 83 in their first year, and we're up to 1,600 teams now. So I've done a lot of these programs and can tell you firsthand how really great they are in providing unique and empowering experiences for students and faculty. Okay, MRI program. I just want to mention this program. I've actually done an MRI too as an academic. It's in blue, but it's important, right? So you all, one of the big things with major research instrumentation is that the federal government wants to make sure we have the best instruments in the world. And that's why we spend lots of money every year investing in university infrastructure. That being said, we just don't want to fund toys. We want to fund useful devices. And you all here, again, have a great story to tell, because any instrument that you provide or that you put an application for would not only be used by the academics in the room, it could also be useful to industry. And so I think IUCRC is a great platform to go after MRI funds. And these funds are big, okay? Yeah, so everybody knows, okay, this is good, this is really good money. And it's great for professors because they get really cool equipment. And IUCRCs have been successful going after MRIs before. So I just want to let you know that. Okay, and then of course there's the SBIR program and the Innovation Corps program, which I'll comment on. Both are great programs for spin-outs, all right? So the I-Corp program is a training program to teach academics how to become entrepreneurs to potentially launch startups. And the SBIR is a little bit further along. The SBIR program, you already have a company and a technology, and you're looking for for seed money, not investment. And the seed money that you're looking for from NSF will provide up to $1.6 million in seed funds that will prepare your startup for investment. So we're trying to get these nascent companies ready for outside investment. And with that, I will close because I'm over time. I apologize for that. Thanks. Yes. Oh, the first one that comes to mind. So there's one in Mexico. I won't tell you the first one that comes to mind. There's one in Mexico, South Korea, and Yeah. There's, I was going to say in the UK, and there's in China too. So, and the one in China is a little, you know, we're dealing with that. Okay. So, yep, you're welcome. So international, the important point about the international IUCRCs, just so you know, is we welcome international collaboration. No federal funds can go to the international site. So it's really, and you can have, any global company can invest in your IUCRC, but what we're really looking for are opportunities for collaboration. So these are parallel organizations, and the tax dollars do not cross US boundaries. All right. Thank you.